Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Covenant Cast. I'm your host, Zach.
And I'm Steven, and today we are doing an X-Wing 2nd Edition Power Hour. We're going to answer all of the community questions that have come up about X-Wing 2nd Edition, but that's not all. We've also got a lot of news to cover.
And we'll be doing that first.
We've got Destiny, we've got Arkham, we've got Netrunner.
L5R.
We've got L5R. I think you have some special things as well, so stay tuned, guys, and we'll cover X2 and everything that it means for this community.
Do I start?
Yeah,
or you start.
you can
Who
start.
talks first?
You
I
start.
talk first,
I
you talk
talk
first.
last.
That's a Star Wars quote. And with that, we are into the episode about, at least tangentially related to X2. So there's been a lot going on. First thing I want to hit is played at the weekly Destiny League night last night.
Okay.
At Covenant Tulsa. And I've been live streaming Wednesday nights.
That's a new thing.
From the Team Covenant Facebook. Just kind of exploring it.
We are just feeling it out.
We haven't done a ton of live streaming, and it's something I'm interested in, so we'll see where that goes. If you like watching Destiny, and when X2 comes out, I plan on streaming that as well on Wednesday nights. It's our weekly league night, but there's a lot going on in that community, and not a lot going on in the game sometimes. It's kind of how it feels.
That's an amazing way to put it.
But we posted we did one of our first, which is interview while we play a game. And I did that with Jeremy Zorn, who's the lead developer on Destiny right now. And we previewed a couple new cards from Way of the Force. And the community reaction has been great. All the positive comments and people are just excited to see new cards.
That was hugely cool. So thanks all Star Wars Destiny communities, I guess, for leading the charge on.
And it's cool because there's definitely like those community, like the podcasts and the video channels that are like consistently posting Destiny content at this point. And they get anything, and it's like, we have something to talk about again, right? So that was cool to see. But back to the last night. So our community here has been jamming. We announced the Covenant Master Series. People are really excited about draft. We've been drafting forever, and we've been just full house on Wednesday nights playing Destiny. People excited, lots of energy, so it's cool. But most notably for me, it was very cool. I'm in the middle of my stream last night, right? And we've also been posting polls on Twitter and Facebook where it's like, what should I play?
Big polls now.
Yeah,
we're
exploring
doing a lot of
polls as well. Just exploring the podcast format. We're kind of in an exploration phase.
Yeah, we are.
I'm in the middle, and I'm getting trashed. The polls voted on the Grand Inquisitor, and there's a reason he doesn't get played, apparently. I think I can get there, but we'll see. But I'm playing there, and Eric Wainwright is a local player.
Classic.
He's won a couple of regionals, and he's known for playing Padawans. But I'm just sitting there, and all of a sudden, walking up next to me is Donovan, which is Donovan Wainwright, Eric's son. And he's like, hey.
How old are we talking about, son-wise?
7.
7, okay.
7 years old. Walks up to me and says, hey, I just won the Destiny tournament. And I'm like, he was my first opponent last week.
Oh, that's so cool.
And he was super excited, and it was awesome.
Wow,
and
that's
like
amazing.
20 people just got schooled by a 7-year-old.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons I love Destiny, which is just that it is simple enough for a lot of people to play. And he's really good.
Well, of course he is, because Eric's really good. They got that value brain.
Going for the value.
Certain people have the value brain, right? Where it's just like they're just able to understand what you're getting for what you're giving in a very good way.
Yeah.
And I've seen it. It's like our friend, what was his name that with the spoils? He would just go in and like learned, I think it was the World of Warcraft TCG and won.
Oh, Ben Chen?
Yeah, Ben Chen.
Yeah,
and won the entire tournament.
Just a mathematical
the next
monster.
Day, right?
Yeah, won a huge tournament. But yeah, I was really excited to see that and to see him walk up and just be so excited to win. It was great. It was a good moment for me.
Does it make you especially happy because literally I remember us having those moments when we were like not quite that young.
I remember the first time we were like 12 or 13 and you beat an older gentleman.
Yeah.
And like I think it was John Latest. Do you remember
that?
It was
Latest. Yeah.
He was not pleased. But for me it's like I love it. Cuz ultimately it's just a new generation of people.
And I'll tell you what, it gets you hooked.
Yeah.
Like, you're that 7-year-old winning that tournament, like, you're probably playing tabletop games forever.
For the rest of your life.
At that point. You got it.
Also of note there, another friend of mine, Jimmy Sharp from Texas, was chatting with me last night because he had seen the previews that we posted. And there's a lot of, again, there's nothing really to speculate about in the Destiny community right now because it's so dry.
Well, the set was it was supposed to. I mean, the set has been a long time coming.
Yeah, so we got Legacies in January. We're basically 5-6 months later. We have like 4 or 5 previews from the next set, and that's it, including the 3 we just posted, or like maybe 7 or 8. So it's not that much. But there's also a lot of speculation. He was trying to confirm it. He's like, hey, I heard Way of the Force is going to be out by your first Covenant Masters event on
And that's June 22nd?
June 23rd.
23rd.
I think. It's a Saturday. I think it's June 23rd. And I was like, he was like, is it going to be there in time? And I was like, Jimmy, I'm going to be honest. I have no idea. I wish I knew. I pray. I literally pray that it shows up in time for this event. But then the other question I had for him was, I had
World Peace, Destiny sets, Family Safe, these kinds of things are what you're
the
praying
list.
for.
That's big. Have you been looking at my notes? But I also noted, it's like I've seen the registration list on like who's already registered, and I was like, I haven't seen your name. It's like I was curious if you were coming. And he's like, oh, we're going to sign up later, me and people. Two things on that. One, there's only so much space. Two, there is a cutoff, which is the qualifiers on June 23rd. We've been announcing we have like the tokens and then the participation deck box that people are going to get that's going to be shown.
Have we spoiled that yet?
We showed it on like an Instagram story. We do some behind the scenes stuff there. Also trying that right now. But there is a cutoff point because we have to have enough packs for people to draft and all that kind of stuff. So if you're considering signing up and you haven't, or you are planning on coming and haven't signed up, I recommend doing that quickly because we will run out of space, and also we're going to have to just cut it off at some point because there's only so many boxes in the world.
Right. So the Jimmy Sharps of the world, get your registrations
and
in.
Raul, I'm looking at you.
Great. Moving on past Destiny, we've got a lot of really just cool things happening for the LCG world right now. The L5R Scorpion Clan Pack got released. We also got that novella that has come out. So we're seeing how this is starting to become a common theme in all of these games. These novellas are starting to happen. It seems like these universes are getting fleshed out a little bit more. Pretty cool stuff to see. But Scorpion Clan Pack, right? So first of all, let me tell you this. And I will, of course, always preface all of these statements by saying I am not an L5R player in the same way that I am a Netrunner player or a Destiny player. Don't follow it as closely as the other games, or an Arkham player. But this is the problem with faction-based clan packs / deluxe expansions. And I'm so happy to see, and we'll talk about Rain and Reverie here pretty quick, but I'm so happy to see that Android Netrunner is not doing this anymore.
Because Android Netrunner Rain and Reverie is the first Netrunner Deluxe expansion that is not tied to a faction.
But this is what happens, and we get news about the Scorpion Clan Pack, and Bryce over here, the first thing he says to me is like, guess who gets the next juice?
And your probably logical answer was like Unicorn.
Because somebody who needs it,
even though you don't play all the time, is Unicorn needs help.
Of course.
We all know Unicorn needs help.
We all know that. And of course it's Scorpion, which is already seen to be like a very powerful, etc. And so now they're getting all of these additional tools.
And we're currently in the universe where Phoenix, who got the first clan pack, feels this is chatter, right? It's like Phoenix and Scorpion are the best,
right?
From what I've heard,
right? The chatter, yes.
And then you have the other best. It's like you're actually getting a whole bunch of other cards.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yippee.
And so you look at it, and from the base level perspective, it's like, man, FFG is so out of touch. Like putting Scorpion out next, what could they be thinking? Of course, that was probably a decision made a year and a half ago, 2 years ago.
And we also don't have all the information, right? Because there's going to be a new cycle by then.
That's true.
And so it could also be the case that maybe Scorpion doesn't get great cards in this next cycle.
That's possible, I guess. They could just make bad Scorpion
Guess what?
cards.
Scorpion's color pie is good by its nature. So,
it's always good. It's always going to be good. But I think this is one of the issues with faction-based expansions. I'm going to imagine that all of the production on L5R and stuff was locked in. They bought that license so long ago. They probably had that plan done years ago, are now executing on that plan, but have since, I hope, maybe pivoted a little bit away from those faction-specific deluxes and maybe into things like the Game of Thrones starter decks and the Rain and Reverie style non-faction-based deluxe expansions.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's at this point going to be hard, at least for L5R, to adjust course, because if you have a Phoenix pack and a Scorpion pack,
you got to get them all out.
It's not like you can just be like, all right, now the next pack is for everybody. Well, that's fun.
This is another great Bryce idea here. What if we just did a 6 clan pack 6 weeks?
Oh, that'd be the best.
Just throw them all out.
I've been saying I would love if LCG started with core set, and then it was literally all of our deluxes back to back, month to month. Craziness. Because then you get 7 months in, and it's like you have a card pool.
Yeah, huge
like a real card pool.
But isn't that the point of the LCGs? We don't have to pay this big up front?
The better thing would be the Rain and Reverie style. Yeah. And maybe, again, like we are with different things, maybe they're trying it out with Rain and Reverie, see what the reaction is, and if it's positive and good, they might switch. Now, on the L5R note, they also announced a restricted list.
Yes, they did. That has been in effect now for, what, a couple of weeks?
I think it was last week.
I talked about it on the cast last week.
Oh, really?
I don't know when it was in effect. I don't know when it actually started.
Well, it is now. But that's one way, too, that they can maybe rein it in.
There's a lot of cards on there.
Which is like, if Scorpion's too good and they get a box, you can
at least they have a tool to deal with it.
Yeah.
And won't just run rampant.
Yeah, and
That's
I
fine.
actually, back in the Thrones 1.0 days, I thought the restricted list is a great tool to basically like have mock releases where, and this is what people are saying about in L5R in the community from what I've seen, is that you have product come out, which changes the game and gives you new things to think about. And then in between, especially if they're going to keep doing the 6-pack, 6-week business, in between the twice a year when you're getting packs for your game, if you drop an FAQ in the middle, it's like you get 2 or 3 months with that meta.
Yeah.
After product comes out, and then we're going to change it fundamentally. You get 2 or 3 months with that version of it, and you probably get a deluxe in there in the middle, right? Or a clan pack.
Very reasonable.
And then it's like a new cycle comes out, game changes.
That seems sustainable, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It feels like it, at least
we'll
from the outset. We've also got some Arkham news, really important things. By important, I mean really interesting and exciting for me. The key thing is that the 4th Mythos pack, the City of Archives, this is all just looking so good from Forgotten Age.
The next cycle is Forgotten Age,
yes.
Which is I don't even know, we've been saying Aztec themed, but I'm not sure that's quite right.
There's a video on the way with Matt, and we talk about that and think, what is the cycle about and what does it mean to be Aztec themed? And he was like, the prompt wasn't really Aztec themed, it was just one of many kind of adventurous, Forbidden Temple style like mythos that you could pull from. So it's not expressly Aztec, but there's a lot of that influence on it. And the thing that I like the most about what's happening here is we have they previewed this Body of Yithian basically card.
That was the craziest investigator I've ever seen.
Well, it's so cool because you literally have to swap your investigator into this body by going on this is a lot of assumption on my part, but that you are essentially kind of like doing a ritual of some kind. And then you become this like insectoid Yithian Cthulhu weird creature. And you keep this 2/2/2 stat line, but you keep your investigator deck and your weaknesses are still there. They still reference you, but all the good stuff no longer references you.
I didn't know that you evolved from...
It becomes your investigator card.
For permanent?
Well, just for, I think it's maybe voluntary. Like it could be that you can jump out of the body,
like
and
read
jump
this
back
book,
in
say
it.
these words, you jump in the body.
It could be that you can only get to certain locations if you're in the in Yithian body. You can scurry through it's insane, right? So that
it looks cool. The art of him whatever he's using as his hands reading through that book is this is cool.
The whole thing just looks great. So that's great.
And on that note, the first pack of the Forgotten Age cycle is actually on the FFG upcoming page switch to shipping. So it should be coming out. If you're listening to this, it should be just under 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So if you're subscribed, you will, at the point of listening to this, probably have been charged. That'll be automatic on the way, and it'll be showing up soon.
That's right. And if you're not subscribed, what are you doing?
Well, you should.
It's great. It really is great, especially for Arkham. So good. Also, Netrunner. Let's talk about this because it actually is extremely relevant. 2 very, very, very important things have happened. The first, most important thing is that the revised core set has moved to shipping on the upcoming page.
Which brings up the real point of they did a revised core set.
And it was gone.
And then it was gone. So that's a success, but at the same time, it's kind of one of those.
Well, I got to tell you, of all the things that I know about the organization as a whole, all the way from top to bottom that is producing this, it's ultimately a conservative outfit. I mean, and I think that's been successful in the past. And it's easy to be conservative in this industry because, it's not a sure thing ever what the consumer base is going to do. New games come out and is it a reboot? Is it going to get any...
2.0 of Netrunner? It's I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff that goes on. But it is, the 2 points are, one, it's a bummer that they ran out. Also kind of good because it means people liked it. And I think the game of Netrunner, just from my touch points in the community, we have a regional coming up that I'm planning on playing in, so it's always fun to
get back in,
start crawling back in.
Yeah.
Because Netrunner to me is kind of like the
I need to crawl back in.
The dad or cousin of Destiny.
Yeah.
It's like it feels like they're related somehow. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Not
it's
sure
actions,
yet.
man.
But it's coming back. I'm super pumped. I think there's a lot of people that have been wanting to get in this game. We see this all the time in the comments, and we did the Learning Netrunner series, and people are like, "Hey, I want to play, but where do I buy it? It's $300 on eBay," and it's like, sorry,
don't,
not yet.
Hold
wait.
Off.
So that's coming back, and I think we're supposed to get Reign of Reverie in the
sometime
point
soon
in the near future.
And then we've also we saw some previews for Reign and Reverie that are, to me, so tremendously exciting.
I saw that.
Tim texted me
younger kid
this as soon as it happened. He was like, "You've got to see this because the dream of mine has always been Emptied Mind Anarch as a reasonable build, right? An Emptied Mind is the card that if you don't have any cards in your hand at the start, you get the extra action.
Which is crazy, because you can die from
You die all sorts of ways. But then you have this Guru Defender that can like prevent damage, and you have other cards like where you can make a run and prevent all damage during the run. And so it kind of is trying to play into this theme. But at the time that all came out, it just wasn't reasonable. And where the game was with tags and damage and stuff, it's just like, you're kidding yourself.
Yeah, and they really reined that in.
And that has been reined in. And then meantime, you have this new runner. You get a credit at the start of your turn if you have 2 or fewer cards in your hand.
Okay.
So automatic drip economy
That's
at
nice.
the beginning. You have this guinea pig card that is trash every card in your hand and gain 10 credits. Costs 4.
So like your last click could be pay 4, trash my hand, gain 10 money.
Yes.
Then going to the next round, I get an extra click and a free money for my runner ability.
Correct. Or at any moment, you could have 0 cards in hand, pay 4, gain 10. Because you could just trash everything in your hand, but if your hand's empty, it doesn't require you to have
Man,
trash.
it's such an empty mind.
Yeah,
You're so
right?
zen
Exactly.
there. It's so zen.
It's so good. And then the best piece of this, and I scanned through these previews, so maybe I'm getting it wrong, but I don't think I am.
Man, I hope it's out by the regional.
Best part of this is there's a new Anarch Code Gate Breaker that ties into this theme, right? Costs 4 to install and is 5 strength, and it pay 2 credits to break all subroutines on a piece of Code Gate ice. So that's like, the value there is great. It starts at 5. Can't pump it, obviously, so Anarch style.
It's classic.
-1 strength for every card in your hand.
Oh, that's awesome.
So you get a 5 strength Code Gate Destroyer. It gets up to Toll Booth and all the hard
But
stuff.
literally, this is your dream.
Yeah, you can run Ice Carver with that, man. You can get those 6 strength Code Gates. Get them. I haven't looked at the ice in a long time, so I don't know how relevant it is for the specific ice strength right now.
But it seems like they're reinforcing the theme.
There's enough pieces. You get the feeling there's enough pieces there to make it work.
Yeah.
And so now my brain kind of goes to like, well, now I have some clay to start molding, so I get really excited about that.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. That's awesome.
And then there's the NBN card, the new NBN identity.
I haven't seen it.
It simply says this.
I saw they posted the article, but I didn't read it.
It's basically when you encounter the outermost piece of ice, you're considered to have 1 additional tag, even if you have 0.
Oh, so all the ice that requires you to be tagged now gets.
And they release some Bugatti piece of ice, just like 10 cost. And if you're tagged, you lose 5 credits, you take 3 damage, you da-da-da. So there's no way to avoid that. You just have to break it.
That's crazy.
Right? Isn't that awesome?
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Netrunner, just the little engine that it just will not stop going forward. It's the only of those original kind of early LCGs, I feel like, that have the legs to continue and continue and continue.
Well, and
we saw the Star Wars LCG, kick the bucket, and you get the feeling
that
like
a lot to that story.
You get the feeling there's some slowdown in a lot of the older LCGs, but man, Netrunner just seems to have found its community, and it's just going potentially forever.
I would love to see that because I think it's a great game. All right, we're going to move along here to some questions. If you're not familiar, you can use the hashtag AskCovenant on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We answer your questions right here on the show. So in a way, if you want us to talk about something on the show, all you have to do is ask.
Yeah, we're kind of, the community is building the episodes at this point, which is a lot of fun for us. Why not just ask, right?
Yeah, well, we appreciate it.
What do you want to hear about? We'll discuss anything.
Always, I think in some small ways, a little surprised that there are enough people to ask enough questions for us to keep doing this. So if you do have a question, we'd love to answer it. And,
it's only been 11 years, to get to this point.
To get to that moment. A casual 11 years of life. More than Donovan, who won the Destiny tournament, has even been alive. So
wow.
Put that into perspective. All right, first question here from Mateus. I'm not even going to try on the last name. I've seen this name before, and I just can't. Says, will you guys do something like the beginner series? This is a bit overwhelming. Thanks. Always enjoy your stuff.
And this is X2,
Thank you. And this
course.
is regarding X-Wing 2, which is where most of these questions are going to come from. So, yeah, of course. Actually, when all the content and announcements started going up, we actually posted our Learning X-Wing series, which there's one blog a part of now and kind of an outline there. So you can sign up on the Learning, if you search for Learning X-Wing or you go to our site and see it. You can search for, on any of those chapters you go to, you can sign up to be notified, and we'll email you whenever it's posted. And of course, we post it on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and talking about it here on the podcast. But yeah.
We're working on that now, so we're basically building that out. We've got the framework in place, so you kind of know what's going to happen, and then now it's about executing. So that's what we're in the phase of doing right now.
So stay tuned.
Stay tuned. We'll teach you some X-Wing. You should be good at it too. I mean, you're a pretty good X-Wing player, so I'm excited about that series. As opposed to L5R, where we were both just literally learning at the time.
Yeah, because we made that whole learning series August at Gen Con when we got the core sets early, and then the game came out in October. It was between that, and so we had core sets, and it was like, learn as you go. And I remember getting halfway through and being like, probably could have done the first one better. But it was cool because people were actually learning with us.
Yeah.
And if you followed all the different gameplay videos we were doing, and the learning series itself has evolved quite a bit since then. So stay tuned. X-Wing, I'm sure, will be its own thing.
More on X2, yeah. So question 2, we've got a couple of parts. Trevor from Twitter there, Team Covenant, how much longer for TC's 2.0 X-Wing templates? Other companies are making it very hard to wait, but I love TC's. Thank you, Trevor. And then similarly, the real EJ Crandall.
Hey, I don't like the fake one.
Yeah, here's the fake EJ. No thanks. We'll be making tokens and templates for X-Wing 2.0. The short answer here, are you going to give it?
Well, legally speaking, I need to correct you in saying that we will make tokens and templates compatible with X-Wing.
X-Wing 2nd Edition. Correct.
Well, yeah, go ahead and answer.
That
You're the marketing
and many
guy.
other things. I mean, you can use your range ruler to level a
picture
bookshelf
frame.
or a picture frame. These kinds of things. So
you can use it to like swat someone's hands away, or as a staff, like as a gaffy stick, like Yoda. It's one of my favorite scenes in the.
It's a long range ruler.
Both the that's right, that is right. But what was I going to say there? Oh, when Yoda's hitting R2 with the stick, is one of my favorite scenes. Period. And you can use a template.
You're talking
like
about from the music video?
Well, from the movie Empire Strikes Back, but also from the bad lip reading of Star Wars. If you haven't seen that, you should. But yeah, of course, we're going to
working on it right now. Yeah,
and
it's in development.
I will say, just from the development conversations I've heard, it'll be worth the wait. I think we're going to an entirely new level with these and really pushing the boundaries on what we're looking to do. So very excited for those to actually come to fruition, and they'll be out in plenty of time for 2.0.
They will. Yes, God willing, and
or at least that's the hope. That's number 4 on that prayer list we were talking about earlier. All right, question number 3 from Spinward Bound. He thanks us for something I do not know. I'd like to hear your perspective on new players. Should we get in now or wait for 2nd edition?
Ooh, that is a great question. I think there's a lot of perspectives on this.
So my perspective is that there is never a bad time to get into Star Wars X-Wing. If I were approaching it right now, because we're in June by the time this episode goes up. So July, August, it's 3 months until 2nd edition comes out. That's a long time to not start playing a game. And I think with the number of previews that are coming out, a lot of people are even starting to proxy kind of the stuff. So if it were me, I would be looking to get enough to start playing without also spending a ton of money. My recommendation would be to start with a single faction.
I think you have to just do a single faction until it converts.
Yeah, and so don't worry as much about getting all the upgrade cards if you're not playing at like Worlds, which there isn't going to be one between now and then. You don't even need to have the upgrade cards. You just need the ship and the dial right and the pilots. So I would pick a faction, whether it's it would be Rebel, Empire, or Scum, in my opinion. And then if you buy enough of it, you can just buy the conversion kit, and you can have a whole bunch of ships. Because even when 2.0 comes out, they're only releasing a fraction of the ships for each faction at a time in each wave. And so if you want to play Empire as an example, if you go ahead and buy a 1st edition ship, for a while, the only way to get that ship is going to be buying the 1st edition one, not even through September. So it may well be a year or 2 before you start seeing some of the random ships like the Decimator or the Lambda class shuttle for Imperial. So I would say definitely dive in. I would start with a starter and then buy a couple ships that you like, learn how to play, have a good time. Another thing is, what's been happening around here at Covenant is a lot of the locals are also, because it's going faction-based, they're getting rid of some of the factions. So if you can find another player that's getting rid of their Imperial ships or a part of their Imperial ships or Rebel or Scum, that's another valid option as well.
If it were me, I would basically choose a list that I love thematically. So I've talked about this in the cast before. I'm a huge fan of just the E-Wing, the way that it looks and just kind of the feel of the ship. So if it were me, like starting right now, I would buy a few E-Wings, maybe another Rebel ship or 2 that might go well with it, do a little research, see what flies well together, maybe some X-Wings, and then, or some Y-Wings in my case. And then I would fly that for the next 3 months. And just learn it and just feel it out. And then as soon as the X2 relaunch happens, you buy that Rebel conversion kit. Now you have an entirely new way to build the entire list that you already have, and you can start getting new Rebel ships from the first wave and from that launch event. So that's what I would do. And then I would just start collecting Rebels all the way up the line.
Yeah, and I think something to note if you're new is that the rules are definitely being tightened and updated, and a lot's changing about the game. But a significant amount of the fundamentals of the game aren't. So the templates that come with this set are the same dimensions. So learning how to maneuver ships and pilot ships,
So
there's a lot
important.
of fundamentals that you'll learn in that time frame, so that by the time second edition is actually coming out, you're way ahead of the curve.
Yep. Yep. Never too early to learn how to fly. That's what
right.
they say.
I think that's on a shirt somewhere.
Let's go to question 4 here.
That's right.
Louis Desroches.
Seen this
Louis,
name before.
yeah, tell me how to
bail.
pronounce that, Louis.
So, getting someone's name wrong is not what you want. It's not ideal.
You just put an accent on it and anything sounds okay. Ask Kevin, given everything the designers have learned regarding baked-in point costs and the shift to an app for X-Wing 2.0, why on earth does Legion still have printed costs? I get the development and production takes time, but surely the conversation regarding X-Wing 2 overlapped with Legion development. At this point, Legion will go down the same path. We'll be talking about meta problems and Legion 2.0 in a few years. We kind of talked about this last time. Tell me, Zach, I don't know enough about Legion to truly...
Do you want me to speculate?
To truly know enough. But if we need to go to a model where point costs are essentially removed from the equation and pushed to an app, website, etc., would Legion have to reboot to do that?
I don't think so. And Legion's still very young. There's very little out. But I think part of it, there is production time things, right? Where it's like, and even going back to our example of exploring things and trying new things out with Reign of Reverie Deluxe for Netrunner, it's the first non-faction specific Deluxe, and maybe that'll start carrying over to other games. I think you kind of see that trend happening where they do something first with one game, see the reaction, because if X-Wing 2.0 comes out and ultimately the community does not like interacting with the app or the way that works, maybe you have to go another way. And so to commit to that wholesale for all your games is probably tough.
A little risky.
Speaking of Legion, I think the reality is that removing point costs from X-Wing is, while it's a huge change and something that I think lets them future-proof the game, that is not the problem with X-Wing First Edition. Like the weight of the problems that were created, one of the answers could have been the ability to adjust point costs so that you don't, that didn't happen in the first place. But the problems with X-Wing were baked into card design, pilot abilities, on down the line. So I feel like with Legion, just from what I've played, that they have been very conservative.
Yes.
And the abilities they're given, even Vader, I think that he may have run into the classic Vader problem, which is we're going to make him awesome, but we're going to make him cost a lot.
Yeah.
And ultimately, in any miniatures game, it becomes a game of numbers, and it becomes tough to play him. And I think they will make him more than playable. I think he's currently playable. But at the same time, this question kind of ties all the problems with X-Wing to the point cost.
Yeah.
When I look at the Legion cards, I don't think the cards are the problem. And it's kind of like the quick start builds in X-Wing for Legion, which is, even if right now they decided, hey, all the point costs on the cards for Legion in tournaments don't matter. It's like, we have an app. That's where the actual point costs are. Ignore this. Point costs being printed on the card, even as it is now, isn't really a problem for me. If they wanted to make that switch, I think they can. And I legitimately don't think, I won't be surprised if it does happen, because I expect it to go super well in X-Wing. And once they have the technology to do that with the game, they just copy, paste, fill in new data for a new game. And it's very similar with the upgrade slots and all that kind of a thing. So I won't be surprised at all. I don't think it's even necessary for them to reboot. They may, in future printings of the core set and the Stormtroopers, remove the point cost altogether. But even then, it's like you could have the point cost as like this is what you do if you don't want to use the app.
Yeah, it doesn't really hurt anything, does it? I mean, it just means that you can buy it, and then you can at least have a frame of reference for that first few experiences. And then if you decide to go to a tournament, you just have to update your understanding of what things are worth.
Yep.
Which is fine. But, that's even with X-Wing, they could have left the point costs on there and then just said, but they don't matter for tournament play.
And that's what again, there's a lot of space, I think, in all these games to explore new ways of doing it, and each game is unique. But in Legion, I could easily see them printing on the front one side that has points with upgrade slots, and on the back, no upgrade slots or no points. And it's like, this is the side you use when you go to a tournament. You can kind of adjust it. So
that'd be really cool.
We'll see where they go, but I would love for them to do that.
On that front, that'd be interesting if you had a system like that, where you had like the quick build on one side and you flip it over, and maybe even, and I hate to introduce the dry erase marker to the genre, not introduce, but reintroduce.
Erase marker,
yeah, but you could sleeve it in a clear sleeve, and maybe there's like 20 options, and it's like this slot, this slot, this slot, and depending on what the app says, you can literally just physically mark that so that everybody at the table knows you don't have to have the app.
And that's where it's like, with something like apps, phones are becoming such a part of everyone's got them in their pocket. Like, not everyone, but most people. And so the ability to be kind of ambiguous on what upgrades can go on this character and the ability to adjust that in an app makes a lot of sense because anyone can access the app. Technology is getting good enough where I could hit a button and share my list with you, and you can just see it on the other side of the table.
Or the old printer. You can always print stuff
Always
out
print
too.
them, so.
And maybe the modern game store or game play space needs to just have printing capability.
Yeah, and I think to kind of end that question from Lewis, the reality to me is I don't think there's a world where a company like Fantasy Flight Games or any other game company is shooting for a reboot, right? It's not like they're like, hey, someday we'll reboot this into second edition. So I think they will take the steps they have to take to keep it healthy. And something like we've seen even the revised core set with Netrunner, which was a kind of softer reboot. So we'll see what they do, but I don't anticipate a Legion second edition. And, I could be dead wrong.
Could be wrong, but we'll see.
All right, next question here. Question from Noah Wilson says, question about linked actions. If you can boost to barrel roll, for example, why can't you barrel roll then boost? Seems limiting in a bad way. Based on what I've seen to this point, most of the changes being made in 2.0 seem like improvements, but not the forced order of actions. Creative piloting is one of my favorite parts of the game.
Let me take a swing at this from just a flavor/theme perspective, and I haven't looked at the linked actions to really evaluate how much of it is about lowercase r reality, but for one reason, like maybe you need to increase your speed to achieve a barrel roll, right?
Like you need to boost to be able to barrel roll.
Like when you think about a barrel roll, it's like hit the accelerator and then you have what you need, the force that you need to actually cut through and do a real barrel roll.
Which is pretty cool.
So it feels like they're trying to get that, basically create that sensation of, I'm locked in, I'm gonna hit the throttle and then do this cool maneuver.
Yeah, and I don't know on the linked action, so if you are unfamiliar, basically it's you take one action, then you can take a second action, kind of like you could push a limit, except for it's forced. This is the only thing you can do.
Yeah.
And it's usually red, so you get stressed from doing it. Thematically speaking, I understand how like boost could lead to a barrel roll.
Yeah.
I don't know if it exists, but if you ever have to boost to barrel or barrel roll to boost, that one's a little more like, I feel like you could always boost if you could boost, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
But you can explain anything away in Star Wars. It's like the ship is built this way.
But long story short, from a design perspective,
that's where I was getting ready
it's like, well, I think the whole reasoning behind all of this is that we don't want to cede ground at any point where it could potentially go wrong.
Yeah, well, and that's in first edition you kind of had this problem, right? Which is push the limit became ubiquitous because you could take two actions, and then you either had boost barrel roll or you put engine upgrade on to get boost and barrel roll. And then once you had that, even the changes to barrel roll got tighter. It's like where you can go is specific. The actions in the order you can take them is specific. And I think mechanically speaking, I'm a huge fan of this. And I love repositioning. Like that is how I like to play.
Yeah.
But it forces you to fly in a way that is going to allow you to use your set of maneuvers to get out of the arc instead of just... The reality is a good player at a high pilot skill with boost and barrel roll as it was previously built can be a nightmare. It can be an unwinnable situation. And I think across the board, they're trying to prevent those games where you just can't win. Whether it's through gaining shields or just not ever being able to be shot.
Obviously, there's some give and take on this, though, right? Where the more that you restrain things, the less freedom players have to express that skill, right? So do you restrain too much where everything plays out in such a predictable way that you don't have that feeling of being in kind of an X-Wing firefight that is somewhat unpredictable? It's like, well, I know that you only have these two options, really, and I can account for this.
Well, and I think that's where more ships are, because of this, getting repositioning abilities. Then, like, the X-Wing has barrel roll and it didn't before. The Y-Wing has a barrel roll and it didn't before.
Wow, yeah. It's hard
and
to
so,
imagine.
like, they're able to, because they're restricting it, actually be more free with it. But also, it means that ships that can do that become unique, right? Like the TIE Interceptor and the A-Wing are supposed to be incredibly mobile compared to the rest of the ships.
Yeah.
And so if any ship can boost barrel roll in any order and in any direction, how then do you actually make the A-Wing feel like the A-Wing?
Right.
Like you give them a fast dial, sure. Maybe it's green to do both the actions or something. But like now that means that ships that can barrel roll or boost or barrel roll or naturally get a free boost or a free barrel roll or whatever can feel unique. And so you restrict it for everybody, which means you can give a lot of ships that much And then the ships that go past that are very unique because of that.
And then the other piece of this is going back to what the design goals were from the beginning, which was start out and just make every ship feel like every ship. Feel like it should.
Maybe my favorite line from any of the interviews we did.
And the thing about that is that does mean that you need to restrain it to an element of some predictability. Like a Y-wing should always feel like a Y-wing, an X-wing should always feel like an X-wing. So you can't have it totally wide open or nothing feels like anything. And then if you want to create exceptions to the rule, like an X-wing that is less predictable and that is crazy, like say Poe Dameron, you do that on a pilot card, you do that on an upgrade card or whatever it is. So you can introduce those elements that do bring that back to the game. You just make sure the ships, as they stand by themselves, totally vanilla, do feel unique and like what they actually are trying to represent.
Sure, and I think that's what they've, from everything I've seen so far, and we haven't seen all the cards, I feel very confident that that is actually true. They started with how does this ship feel like the ship? Because again, it's like, we literally saw the Y-wing do a barrel roll in the movie. Yeah. And it's like, and it couldn't barrel roll the whole time.
That's great. Like, that is blocked from my mind. I can't even imagine. To me, a Y-wing is just moving slowly and dropping bombs.
Yeah.
But I guess I haven't watched it in a while.
It's just a...
it's just a slow barrel roll. It takes 2 turns to complete.
It's stressful. Like
you flip it on its top for the first action, and then you flip it on.
By the way, I'm so glad that in X-Wing we do not have a Z axis.
Man.
Like Wings of War, like I think they have the like dimensional stuff, which is cool, but like it's a different question.
It's a different thing.
All right, next question here from Clayton Pseudonym, great name, says, the more I hear about X-Wing 2.0, the more I'm on board with it. However, I wonder why some of the changes didn't come into the game earlier. For instance, why not mess with point cost through errata? If you can completely change a card's effect or ability, like Palpatine, Biggs, or a Jumpmaster, why not change the point cost?
Yeah, that's actually a pretty good question, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it could have been done, but part of the point cost is like, when you change Palpatine, as an example, he is something that can go in any list, and he's a single card kind of a situation, whereas like a point cost is, do you just change the point cost on 18 different A-Wing pilots?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That kind of a thing.
Point, yeah.
And point costs historically, right, like changing what a card does or how it interacts with other cards is definitely different in scale than like, making Palpatine 14 points. Because then it's just kind of a different thing. But I don't know. If they can change what the text is saying, I don't know why they couldn't have changed what the points are saying. And they kind of did, by the way, which is they introduced like the A-Wing removes its bomb slot and is -2 points.
Yeah.
So they kind of played with it.
There's an element of that is, the point costs are so tight ultimately that like taking 1 point away, if you do that in an errata, maybe that doesn't do anything. 2 points away, maybe now it's the golden spar, maybe now that's too good. You start tweaking with that kind of stuff, and there's no longer a boundary between what you might want to go in and change as a designer.
Yeah.
So I think it becomes very tempting the moment that you kind of open the floodgates to say, let's relook at everything in the game and change the point cost accordingly.
Yeah.
That's a temptation that maybe you just stay away from for now.
And like the other part of that is, with something like Palpatine as an example, maybe it's that the changes they made originally, again, this is part of the problem of first edition, is like, it wasn't even the point cost that was the problem. It's like, this ability is too guaranteed.
Yeah.
And the only way to fix that is to not make it guaranteed. They could have made Palpatine 20 points. But they also have to be careful not to just make a card unplayable.
Yeah.
Because then you bought the Raider for $100 for Palpatine, and it doesn't work
Hey,
anymore.
we don't have to do that. Can you imagine not having to do that anymore? That was kind of ridiculous,
Yeah.
wasn't
Well, the faction updates are huge to me. I think making it where you can play a faction and not have to chase everything else down. Because I know people are buying like the Corellian or the big Corvette, and it's like, for some Astromechs. And it's like, this is awful. Like, I mean, this is
crazy.
2 inches of cardboard that you're buying for $100. That is not great.
Man.
All right, next question here from Lefty8957. It says, I'm impressed with the safety valves and openness of the second edition X-Wing design, but of course there's no way to future-proof 100%. What do you think the designers will do when they inevitably push up against the boundaries of the new system with newer mechanisms? There are still certain things set in figurative cardboard, stone in 2.0 that may want to change in the future. For instance, Speed 4 banks or turns could be introduced for Wave 2 2.0 ships, but old 2.0 ships wouldn't have access to them. Think we'll see 2.0 printed components ever get updated to get new mechanics, or is the system robust, open, and flexible enough not to need to do that? So a few things here for me.
Hard to know, right?
Which is, what are they going to do when they inevitably push up against the boundaries? And then also, do we think there will be additional like templates or that kind of a thing? So First answer for me is I think they did something very smart by removing the point cost, but even smarter by removing the upgrade slots. Because part of the problem before is they would introduce a new upgrade slot, and then a ship that should well have had it doesn't.
Yep.
I also think by removing the point cost, like we mentioned earlier, it allows them to start with the question, let's make this ship feel like this ship. And if the ship was designed to feel like this ship, it will inherently always feel like that ship. Even if, maybe you're thinking a 4 bank does get introduced to the game, the Interceptor should have that, but it doesn't. The Interceptor should still feel like the Interceptor.
Well, the thing is, that would only happen if there's a ship that is turning faster and better than the Interceptor.
That's
right?
the only reason it should happen.
If the Star Wars universe introduces something that should be faster and more agile than an Interceptor, then it will feel more agile than an Interceptor.
Yeah, and that's the only thing set in stone cardboard are like the dials and the templates, right? Because everything else is ultimately changeable, even as far as like the actions on a card, because they've introduced actions that come when you put an upgrade on. And so like, even if you invent a new action like Coordinate that should be on an older ship, you can easily give it away to basically be able to get that.
I think, so with any kind of game design system, right, there's always going to be, you're essentially building a structure and the walls are going to be there somewhere. So eventually, if you want to expand a design enough, you will find the edge of what the system can take. So the question with X-Wing 2nd Edition for me is, are the walls far enough apart? Is the structure big enough to allow all of the Star Wars interactions and feelings that you want to have in this game not crash against the sides? And I think what was happening in 1.0 was it was starting to really push against it, because there was the conflict between this doesn't feel the way that it's supposed to feel, this ship, but we can't do anything about it because we're literally up against the edge of this. And if we do it, we're going to bust out of this thing, and it just won't work. So I think they have certainly done everything that is reasonable at this point that I can imagine to keep it a tabletop game and the X-Wing that we know and love, while still having as much space in that structure as possible to play. And I just don't think that over time, there's not a way to stay within the confines of whatever point cost you want, whatever upgrade slots you want. My hope is that that would be enough space for at least the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, because the way they could really get in trouble is by introducing like pilot abilities or just a ship itself that is a problem. But even then, right, now you do have the worst case scenario of raise the points. And that's maybe the question, which is like, why weren't you raising the points before?
Right.
And I think part of that is just that X-Wing is built to be an accessible game. And so they didn't have an app. They didn't have a tool. It wasn't even like there's this thing I normally check to see how to build my squad. I'm just looking at my point costs. And so they are now baking into the system this idea that there aren't point costs. You have to use this tool. And so I think just the confusion that could have resulted from a point cost situation, because again, if Palpatine's 10 points and I show up with a list that's 102 points, that's not fixable.
Right.
But if they just change what Palpatine does,
I can still play.
I can still play my list. It's just not going to work quite how I thought it was going to work.
That's actually probably the best point in that last question too. I bet that's why they didn't do it.
So, and there's maybe a myriad of reasons. Maybe they didn't think about it. It's like maybe there was a brain, they were stuck in this way of we're just going to rata because that's what we do. And then here we are now, happy golden days. And then as far as the final question there, do I think we'll see new components introduced? I won't be surprised if we see new debris, new bombs, new that kind of thing. I would be surprised if there's new maneuvers because they did that kind of with the range ruler in Epic and the movement tool in Epic, and it came with the Epic ships. But I don't think they want to print those things in every new release. Kind of like they put the Epic range ruler in every Epic release, and it's like you have to print that every time.
Yeah, that's not ideal.
And even as players, it's like you don't want it to be, again, the accessibility of a game is something I think they're aware of, especially with X-Wing. And so I don't think you want it to be the case that you have to buy a starter, and also you have to buy one of these 8 expansions to make sure that you have all the things you need to actually play the game.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we will see.
I think it's big enough. I mean, I'm super ambitious in thinking that X-Wing is going to go for at least the next decade. I mean, I really just think that that's the case. We've been going to conventions and Gen Con for a while now, and I've seen some games on those tables, in the convention hall or in the play hall, whatever it's called,
tournament area.
That I think people have probably been playing that for 30 plus years now.
Yeah.
You know, with the, like you said, the planes on stuff and like battleship games that are doing. I think this game is probably just going to be, it'll be around forever.
I was going to say, it'll be around forever because the people are still playing the 1990 Star Wars CCG.
Yeah. But the next decade, I think, is huge. We've got all these Star Wars movies coming out. All this, this is going to be one of the primary game titles in our, maturing into the industry phase over this next decade.
100%.
If we haven't already.
So I have a question, and we always end the show with a question.
Hold on, before we end the show, tell me about, give me a quick update on your life this past week.
Oh yeah, we didn't do it this week in our life. I turned 30.
That's why I asked, because it's really important.
I actually turned 30, and I celebrated that. When I grew up, birthdays weren't like a huge deal. I also shared a birthday with my dad, and my little brother's birthday is 4 days before mine. So it was always kind of like it's everyone's birthday. We're all having dinner together kind of a thing. But I watched Solo on Thursday, and then I watched every Star Wars movie in between that and Monday, which was Memorial Day.
Yeah, you're not faking it, are you? I mean, this is you really like it.
It's pretty good. I also, actually, Tuesdays, and more on the Star Wars vein, my niece Anna, from a very young age, she was like 2 or 3, she knew that I loved Dark Vader, as she called him.
Dark Vader.
And so every time she'd see him, whatever it was in the store, she'd try to convince her mom to buy this thing for Uncle Zach because she knew how much I loved Dark Vader. And so she's now 8, which is when you get to the age where it's maybe possible that you watch Star Wars. And probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, she told her mom, she's like, I'm ready to watch Star Wars. I want to watch it.
Awesome.
So we watched that on Tuesday night, and it was awesome because she's sitting there, and you forget what it's like to watch those movies as a kid.
So were you watching New Hope all the way through?
New Hope.
Just New Hope.
But you forget what it's like to be a kid watching Star Wars until you're watching it with a kid. And it's really fascinating because there's so much going on and so much you take for granted about the universe and how big it is. And she was so curious and asking all these questions and just going through all these emotions of he doesn't have any parents, what happened to his aunt and uncle, and all these big things happening. And she's going to be shocked when she finds out who Luke's dad is. So I'm excited to watch that.
So two questions for you. One, how does it feel being 30?
Old.
You feel old? You feel it in your bones or just in your brain?
I probably 3 to 6 months ago started physically feeling old.
Yeah.
Just we go to conventions, and we've traveled a lot in the February through May range, and my energy level is just different, and my go get 'em attitude is a little different. I'm still a bit ambitious and naive in that way, but definitely feeling older. I don't feel old. I feel not young.
Yeah.
I think
you can't get away with it anymore.
Yeah, because actually, coincidentally, I turned 30. My dad turned 60.
Okay.
Same day. I was born on his 30th birthday.
Very cool.
But I was talking to him, and it was it's not that I feel old, but I'm definitely not young anymore.
Yeah.
And that's a weird phase.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, I feel old.
Yeah.
You're 60.
Man, it is a weird phase. What about Solo? I haven't seen it yet. Just give me your initial thoughts. I had to give you a setup here. I had a friend of mine on Facebook who I respect their opinion quite well.
Do I know the friend?
No. And they said that Solo felt like the most Star Wars movie of the catalog since the original trilogies.
So I have a lot of thoughts here. And I can't believe I tried to end the podcast 10 minutes ago.
Yeah,
this is going to be crazy.
No, yeah, you got to get into Solo.
So we have 2 Star Wars movies in 6 months. Last Jedi, Solo. And Last Jedi, because I'm in the Star Wars Reddit and Facebook groups and Twitter and following certain people.
You're there.
And the Star Wars Last Jedi seemingly split this for the first time in a long. We all acknowledge the prequels weren't great, but it was if you like the prequels, especially online, it wasn't people were oh, I can't believe you like the prequels. That's ridiculous. It's yeah, those are bad movies, but what do you do? But Last Jedi, there's something different about it. And I'm referencing Last Jedi to answer your Solo question because I watched Solo and then I watched all the movies, and I've been spending I've come to Destiny Night every week on Wednesdays. There's tons of Star Wars people with tons of different opinions, and the thing about it is I feel really serious Star Wars fans. It's interesting. I'm maybe as serious as you can get. But
pretty serious.
I don't think I take it as seriously as some people, and not in that's maybe not the right way to say it. Where it's like, for a lot of people, Star Wars is a fabric of who they are. It's a big part of their life. They've whether it's Luke Skywalker being your hero,
or dressing up as a stormtrooper and going to a convention. Right?
Yeah, sure.
There's levels of
but
interest.
It's very important to them, and so there's a lot of expectations. There's a lot tied up into all this, and I get it. People care a lot, and I care a lot as well. But with Solo, it's becoming more apparent to me, which is they didn't like Last Jedi. People that didn't like Last Jedi because it wasn't what I expected. It wasn't the Star Wars I know. It's like # not my Luke. Down the line of like, this is not. I'm just upset, right? But then Solo is, and sort of like The Force Awakens, was too like New Hope. Like it's too much, too Star Wars.
Too familiar.
And so it's this weird thing where it's like I think people have built up what Star Wars is in their head. And unfortunately, they don't get to determine what Star Wars is. And so that's something I think a lot of fans are having to come to terms with. And when you only get movies every 30 years, it's not that hard to do.
Right.
But even looking back at, rewatching the originals now in light of, in the same weekend, I'm watching Rogue One and Force Awakens and Last Jedi and Solo, there is seemingly a tie that binds, right? And like the perception of like what you thought the originals were, because watching my niece watch it when she's 8, it's like, yeah, I get how your perception is built right there on like what this is and what it means to you. But in terms of Solo specifically, super fun movie.
Okay.
I was surprised. I thought that Han was way better than I expected. What's his actual? Donald Glover as Lando is a monster. That guy is a monster.
Man, he's unbelievable.
But I thought it was a really good movie. I was going in with such low expectations, and it was way better than I thought it would be. I thought it was really good, and I think that for people who casually enjoy Star Wars, this movie is incredible. It's everything you could want out of Star Wars and more. I think it's super approachable too, right? Like people can't just walk in and watch Last Jedi. Like I don't think that works and enjoy it. I think anybody could walk into Solo and enjoy it. How it does or doesn't fit into the overarching universe and ties, and is it too connected or unoriginal? I think if you have too much context, it's not. This is the problem I was kind of getting around to in a roundabout long way here, 10 minutes later, is I think people go into Star Wars movies now expecting to have their lives changed and expecting a movie that is going to be with them for the rest of their life. And that is a really hard standard to live up to.
Yeah.
And so Solo is not trying to be that, right? This is a fun story of some of the characters you know, and if you don't know anything, I think you're going to love this movie. Like, that's the craziest part. I think if you've never seen a Star Wars movie and you watch this as your first movie, it's a great way to enter the universe, and it's super modern, and it's super fun, and it also just adds. My concern, tying all of this together, is my general feeling is, and this is why I didn't like the prequel so much, it felt like they tried to tie too much together.
Like shrinking the narrative, basically.
Yeah, you're making it smaller, where it's like, oh, everything's connected, everyone is connected, and it all makes sense.
It's all the same, like 20 to 30 characters, rather than that feeling in the original trilogy where it was like, there's a million characters, and I'm just seeing a few of them at a time. Right?
100%.
It's not all about Luke. It's not all about the Skywalkers. It's not all connected.
And that's why I think for me, like going into Solo, I had low expectations, and my greatest hope. I know like Rian Johnson has a whole trilogy that's going to happen. The guys that did Thrones, Dave and Dan, have at least 2 movies that are on the books. And I'm hopeful that the movies we're getting now were basically like Disney buys Star Wars, and it's like, we need 4 or 5 movies that we know we can put out and do. Yeah. And in the meantime, now we're talking about the next phase. Because one of the things that makes Star Wars to me, and it's cool, I would actually love to see, maybe this will change the actual ultimate question at the end of the podcast, but I think everyone has a slightly different definition of what Star Wars is and what it is to them. And so one of the unique aspects of Star Wars for me is that, unlike Marvel, it's like Marvel has a cast of superheroes they can introduce and make movies about.
Sure.
But for them to make a new hero is not an easy challenge. Like, I think that'd
be very difficult.
Yeah, they're pulling from a source material, right? The actual creation of new. Whereas Star Wars, amazing thing is that you could go 1,000 years in the past or the future, or 1,000,000 years in the past or future, and totally new characters, kind of like they did with Rogue One, but they tied the plot in a little bit, obviously, to the A New Hope Death Star plan thing. But you don't need to have a Skywalker or a Solo or a Kenobi for it to matter, or for it to be interesting, or for it to be connected, right? And that's where it's like, as long as there is literally the Force, which is it's somehow it's part of this universe, right? In the fabric. That's all you need in the bigness of it and the universe of it. So I would love to see them go crazy.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Because they can give me a new character. They can give me the next, like, it doesn't have to be Han Solo or Leia or Luke. It's like, give me Jim, right? Whoever it is.
See, to me, and all that you have to do to make it connected, first of all, you don't really have to do anything. But if you wanted to, like, what if it's 1,000 years ago and your new hero or your new protagonist lands on Hoth and it's a bustling city? And it's like, something happened to Hoth.
That's crazy, right? What if it's a beach city?
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, interesting. And we don't even need to talk about it. But it's just like, here's this planet Hoth, and everybody knows this is where you go to hang out.
And I think that's exactly it. Because one of my big realizations this weekend, there's a lot of flack in the sequels for Captain Phasma. And watching it back, it's actually quite hilarious to me. Because people who think that the original trilogy is like the Holy Trinity and like untouchable, looking at Boba Fett, it's like Phasma gets treated significantly better than Boba Fett.
That's true, actually.
He has like one line, he finds Han, he has one or two lines with Vader, and then literally can't shoot anybody on Tatooine, misses everything, gets totally owned, and then gets thrown into the Sarlacc pit. And it's like nothing, like just nothing. And it's like Phasma at minimum, right, is like literally shooting people and killing them. Like she's hitting. Like, so like that's where like it's interesting. It's like how you view it when you're looking back. And one of the big problems with Last Jedi for some people is like Snoke just getting killed, and it's like he has just as much screen time as Palpatine. Like, and he's actually, you could describe Palpatine to me, and then I can ask you, are you describing Palpatine or Snoke? Because it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, that's what like in your head, Boba Fett's this thing, but then when you actually watch it, it's like.
Yeah.
He's got 1 minute and 30 seconds in the whole saga.
And so much of that came from those comics and all of the like kind
the books, and even
and
years dealing with it. And that's where, like, going back to your point about Hoth, the cool part is, one of the coolest things of Star Wars, and it does so well, is you just see Boba Fett for a minute, and you know he's got a story. Every character's got a story. Same thing with Hoth, where it's like, we know what it ends up as.
Yeah.
What happened? Like, what happened in the middle? Well, it makes you wonder, right? You don't have to know. And that's part of the Solo thing is like, okay, now you know, right? I didn't need to know a lot about Han to understand that a lot of what happened, like, you gathered that he wins the Falcon from Lando, and you just know it from a line he says.
Yeah.
And if you'd enjoy seeing that, cool. And, they do introduce other things they say that you don't get to see that happen. And so there's a whole other side to that. But yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it. I think it's very approachable. I think for not huge, super in-deep Star Wars fans, I think this is maybe the most approachable movie they've made. And the general reaction online has been very positive.
Yeah, it has been super positive.
Yeah, so we'll see.
Well, that's great. All right, so we got the scoop on Solo. I guess I'll watch it now. I'm always guarding myself.
You went there. I'm looking at the
movies.
time here. So I have 2 questions for the audience.
Yes.
I don't know if you have any in particular.
No, I will say that my last week, which we had, I was on vacation and it was great.
You asked me about Star Wars.
Yeah, I know. It
So
all disappears.
you can't go there. So you actually had a long staycation.
I had a long staycation. It was great. It was weird because the first day of it, the washing machine broke, and
you just got a new one.
Yeah, and then it was like, well, part of the vacation is now fixing this problem, which is not what I was looking for.
That's kind of like the Hoth example, where I didn't have to know that something went wrong with your washer. You were like, hey, I need to go home because I delivered my new washer. And it's like, I pieced together that
something
was
must have happened.
Yeah.
So that was unfortunate, but it's fine. We just had to bite the bullet and do that. And then went to the Tulsa Botanic Garden.
Oh, yeah, you were recommending
I got to tell you, it's one of the coolest things that we have in the city. So
what's the one sentence pitch on that?
One sentence is a little bit difficult. Lots of very intentional landscaping, gardening, etc. So much so that you feel like you're in kind of an old school Greek acropolis. I mean, it's like you're in ancient beauty. hanging gardens, blah, blah, like the whole thing.
Just feels that.
It's people making a tremendous effort to create an incredible experience with plants and objects.
That's crazy.
So
that seems worth even just
Doing.
supporting. Like you got to do it just to be like honor this art that's being made.
They're on a 20-year build-out plan right now.
And plants take a while.
Yeah, they have 2 of like the 20 phases done.
That's crazy.
Which is nuts.
That would be awesome.
Isn't that cool? So you need to go see it.
I like it. There's actually some cool stuff happening in Tulsa.
Always.
We're going to get those parks soon.
Yeah.
All right, so some questions for you. We'd love to have you leave them in the comments of the podcast. If you're listening to this, you can head to the YouTube video and leave it there. The 2 questions I have are, number 1, since we've been talking so much about X-Wing, what is your favorite change in X-Wing 2nd Edition? Why is it your favorite? And number 2 is, what do you think about Solo / do you think the universe is getting bigger or smaller?
Loaded question. Thanks for listening, guys.
Until next time, keep playing.